So let's talk about the new Witcher 4 series because it's been generating a lot of controversy. I actually kind of posted on my community tab and got a little bit of feedback from a few people. It's just been interesting to see people's reaction, mainly to Ciri, honestly. I always find this interesting, and it's starting to become more and more common as time goes on that the entire debate surrounding a game is not the actual gameplay because, well, we don't really have, any footage of that just yet, to my knowledge. But it does seem that in recent years, or at least recent months, pretty much every new game that comes out, the big debate is the protagonist and their appearance, right? That seems to be the biggest point of contention that fans have. It's the way that the protagonist looks. And I can understand where some people are coming from with this. I've in fact done videos discussing this exact topic. I've mentioned, the needless uglification of certain characters in games, and, it just seems pointless in my opinion, so I've definitely talked about that for sure. I am personally not really for just changing the appearance of a character or something just for the sake of, seeming woke or pandering or something like that. Especially if a character is changed in a way where it breaks lore or it breaks the immersion or something like that, which oftentimes is the case, I'm usually not for that. I don't really like when characters are changed just for the hell of it, right? If you've seen any of my videos, you know how I feel about certain changes that were done to certain IPs and animes and games, and you know that I feel a certain way about that. In general, I'm not very big on changing things that are successful or were done in a way that there's a certain lore and a reason why they are the way that they are, and if it's successful, if it's not broken, don't touch it type of thing. And with that said, I am even less of a fan when those things are done to pander, right? When things are not just changed for the hell of it. They have a clear agenda. They've been changed in a way to appease a certain loud minority of people. I think that if change is going to happen, it needs to be done with a purpose, right? And this is kind of obvious. Like, if you're going to fuck with something that is already established and is good, like, if you're going to change it, please have a reason to do it. So I do get where a lot of people are coming from with that, and we can discuss other examples, right? But the subject at hand here is Ciri from the new Witcher game, The Witcher 4. She's going to be the new protagonist, and it's generating a lot of controversy. Well, what exactly is generating the controversy, you might ask? I have a feeling that by now you probably know, but there's different aspects to this, but the main one that I'm hearing the most is the way that Ciri looks. People seem to be complaining that they changed Ciri in such a way where she doesn't look as attractive. The original Ciri was pretty cute and she had a certain look to her, and the new one doesn't. A lot of people are saying that this is yet another example of wokeism, right? Another example of the uglification of characters. Again, I completely understand where people are coming from in general because it is a thing where we're purposely making characters ugly, it seems, or chubby or whatever for no real reason sometimes. So I do understand what those people are talking about. I've talked about it as well. But I gotta be honest with you, I actually like the new Ciri. I like the way she looks a lot, and I don't like the original Ciri at all. I don't feel like she fits the game whatsoever. It's funny, I've talked about this before where, there is a right opinion to have on the internet, and depending on which side of that opinion you land, it dictates who you are as a person and how the entire internet sees you. Like, just using another example, Yasuke from the new Assassin's Creed game, The Black Samurai. The accepted opinion is that you're supposed to hate that character, right? And there's multiple examples of that. You're not supposed to like it. That's the agreed upon internet consensus. The current agreed upon internet consensus for Ciri is, again, that you're not supposed to like it. And I've talked about this before, how I fucking hate this mentality of just farming and just, saying what the internet wants to hear or telling people what they want to hear. I really don't like that mentality because one of the reasons why I think that the internet exists and, commentary of individuals exist, it's kind of to escape established media. Like, why would you watch a game review from a small channel or somebody else that's random versus listening to, IGN? Why would you do that? Because you want an authentic opinion. You don't want somebody that's been paid off or somebody that, is supposed to think a certain way or give a certain rating for a game because, whatever the reason is. Maybe because they get special privileges, early access, maybe because they know the developers, whatever the reason is. When you listen to a review or when you tune into somebody's opinion, you want to get their genuine opinion. That's at least why I tune in to listen to what people have to say. And I really fucking hate this trend where it seems like you gotta feel a certain way about everything, right? Like, if a character is black, if a character is a woman, that makes it instantly woke, right? And you're on that side of the fence. And then you can't turn around and criticize something that is actually silly. Like, I don't know, just off the top of my head, how they changed Tomb Raider, how they changed Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, right? They made her look a little bit chubbier, or the whole controversy around Stellar Blade. All of that conversation and all of those changes in general, to me, are very stupid. And this whole, like, modern audience appeal and conversation, to me, is fucking stupid as hell. I don't like it. But I do think that sometimes you gotta be careful not to cross a line where you kind of look ridiculous, right? It's not just because a character, is a woman or looks a little bit different or X or Y that it makes the game woke. And the people in my comments that bothered engaging with me around this conversation, they're not wrong either. Like, they're entitled to their opinion, and they actually left me, like, the ones that I read, it was like a whole paragraph explaining why, and that's valid. It's fine. I'm not saying that if you didn't like the character, that instantly puts you in the category of, a train writer, somebody that, just feels a certain way and sees that everywhere. That's not what I'm saying. But I do feel like sometimes there's a trend where, there's a certain way that you're supposed to think, and if you don't think that way, you're either woke or you're not woke, right? It's like you're not allowed to be a human with multifaceted opinions anymore, and I really don't like that. I think that anybody who's watched some of my videos kind of knows where I fall in this conversation in general. You know how I feel, right? But in general, I'm not one of those people that sees a female protagonist or a character that, is of a certain race or looks a certain way, and I assume that the game is woke. I don't fall in that category either. So let me tell you why I like the new Ciri, specifically when it comes to her voice and her appearance, which is the main point of contention here. There are other things that we're going to talk about also, but this is the main, discussion. They made a few changes to Ciri to where she looks a little bit, quote-unquote, less visually appealing, right? She's less cute, I guess. But to me personally, number one, she doesn't really look ugly. In fact, I think she looks pretty darn cool. And the way that it was done within this universe, within the context of The Witcher, I feel like it makes sense. I never really liked the way the original Ciri looked. I didn't like the way she looked on Witcher 3. It makes sense that time has gone by and she looks a little bit different. Maybe she's aged. She doesn't look like a teenager anymore. To me personally, right now, she looks a little bit more rugged. There's a little bit more darkness to it. Her tone, the way she carries herself, her appearance, there's a little more grit to it. It's darker. It fits better in the context of being a monster hunter. If you're out there hunting monsters and witches and fighting demons and whatnot, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense for you to look, like a princess. I guess I'm not saying that you can't be attractive if you do that. As a matter of fact, Geralt is very attractive, but Geralt also has that dark vibe to him, and he's a guy, right? I can buy that Geralt is a monster hunter, right? I can buy that he's a witcher. The raspy voice and the look, I can buy it. Even though he's a conventionally attractive male, it's still, I can buy it, right? It makes sense. The way that Ciri used to look, I'm sorry, I couldn't buy that. She just didn't look like a monster hunter. There's just no darkness to it. She looked too much like a little princess, like a kid. It would be really weird if that was the same look and protagonist that they made for her now being a witcher. So for those reasons, I do like the change in appearance. She now looks and sounds a lot more like somebody that would actually be like hunting monsters. It makes more sense to me within the context of the series. Again, I'm not really for change just for the sake of change, or change just to uglify a character because women can no longer be beautiful. I'm not for that, and I think that that's stupid. But when there's a change that's made with a purpose, with intention, that makes sense, I'm all about it. And to me, which you don't have to agree, to me, this is a clear example. It makes a lot more sense to me the way she looks now. There's more of a darkness, there's more of a ruggedness. It just, to me, it makes sense. I like the way that she looks for those reasons, even if she's less attractive. There's this mentality that some people have, and I'm not saying that everybody who didn't like the new character feels this way, but you'd be lying to yourself or you'd just be clueless if you didn't know this. A lot of people think that women only belong in video games if they're attractive, right? That the game won't sell if the girl isn't attractive. And maybe there's a level of truth to that when it comes to sales, right? Why make an ugly character when you can make her attractive and get, all the guys into the game for that reason, like Stellar Blade? Let me just make it clear again that there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with making an attractive female protagonist. I don't have a problem with it, but I do think that there's also not a problem when it's the other way around. If you make a character ugly just for the sake of her being ugly or whatever, fine, I can get where some people are coming from with that. But when you make her look like she belongs more in the world that she is in, I think that that's a plus. And I do feel like this is one of those cases where Ciri got redesigned in a way that it makes more sense for her within the context and the darkness that is the Witcher games. So we've covered the appearance, the voice, and all that general, debate and controversy that's going on. Now let's get to the other side that I don't agree with so much, which is more lore-oriented. From everything that we've seen, it looks like in this game, Ciri is a witcher, right? And she passed I believe it's called the Trial of Grasses, right? Which is the trial you undergo to become a witcher. The problem with this, though, is that by the lore of the Witcher, women cannot be witchers. For whatever reason, the biology of however it works, they just can't. It's part of the lore of the series. And it does look like that's the case because on the trailer, we do see her using one of Geralt's, that barrier, that's one of his powers. It does look like she has become a witcher. Now, you can argue that the lore is stupid, or you can argue that, that's a minor thing. It's not important to you. I get it. But to most people, or at least to a lot of people, the lore is very important. Kind of a similar situation to what they did with like the whole Warhammer 40k and Space Marines and whatnot, that there's now female Space Marines and that breaks the lore. I personally do not like when lore is broken in any way because it breaks the barrier of illusion or the barrier that's created around this world. It breaks the world building. If there's a franchise or a game or a story that's beloved for what it is and a lore is a huge component of it, if you completely just disregard it for the sake of a modern audience or just for the hell of it, I don't think that that's good because you've now broken the immersion, you've now broken the lore. Like a lot of people are invested in this and they're immersed into it, and if you change something and make it incoherent or make it to where it breaks the rules that we've pre-established about this world, it's a problem. If you want to make another game that has, a female witch hunter or something like that, no problem, right? If you want to do that, you can make your own game. Good luck to you. Hopefully that game is successful. But I don't think that it's good when you do that to an established IP or franchise or game or whatever it is that has established parameters and an established world already. When you break that world, when you break that lore, you are essentially, for lack of a better word, kind of spitting in the face of the fans, right? You're showing a disregard or a lack of care for how things are supposed to work within this world that already exists and making it your own thing. So that's the other side of the debate, which I tend to agree with. If you want to make a game about Ciri, make it within the, confines of what it is that Ciri can do as a character. I don't think that there's a need to completely break the lore and destroy the world of The Witcher to kind of fit her in, right? I don't think that that's good. I think that she as a character already had plenty of merit on her own grounds. There was no need to break the lore, in my opinion, or, maybe she didn't need to really be The Witcher for The Witcher 4. Maybe could have made another character. Another point that somebody brought up to me, which I've heard a lot, and not just regarding this game, pretty much any game that has a female protagonist, I tend to hear this, is the fact that, if the protagonist is a female, it's going to kind of ruin the immersion because I can't feel like I'm the Witcher because I'm a guy. And let's just be real, the vast majority of people playing this game are men. Yes, there are plenty of women who also like The Witcher, but in general, it's mostly guys. This is not as much of a quote-unquote RPG as something like Skyrim, I guess, where you can really customize your character and put yourself in the game. So it doesn't fit that mold of that type of game as much. But I can see what people are saying. Like for me, I tend to make male characters when I can because it's more immersive to me to play as a male than as a female because I'm not a woman. And I'm sure that for some women, that's also the case. They might want to immerse themselves in the world and they like making a female character. I can see it going both ways. I personally don't really have a problem with the protagonist being a female, especially because it's not a made-up character. It's Ciri. We know who she is and, it was pretty obvious she was going to be the follow-up. It makes sense that she's picking up from where Geralt left off. Everything in the story kind of built up to this. It makes sense. So for that reason, I don't really have a problem with it from a lore perspective, right? And then we come into the immersion part. I also don't have as much of a problem with it because of the type of game. This is not really a game where you could make your self-inserted character, right? You were always playing as Geralt, right? And it's just not different now either. I wouldn't really buy this game expecting it to be something like Skyrim or Dragon's Dogma, where I can, create my, insert X amount of 10 different traits to make the character look exactly like me. So for those reasons, I don't personally have a problem with it, but I can see where some people are coming from and they say that for them that's an issue. I've heard that opinion not only in my comment section, but other videos too. I think that more customization is almost always a win in pretty much any game. Giving somebody the option to play as a male or a female or letting them play the character the way that they want that character to look, I think is always going to be a win. I don't think it always has to be done that way, and, based on the lore and all that, it might not be possible, but in general, I think it's usually a win. I would personally give people the option to choose between who they want to play. Even if it's not something that's important to me, or I might find it silly or whatever, it's important to a lot of people. Now, The Witcher, like I said, it's a little bit different in that sense. It's a lot more narrative and story driven, right? There's an established lore, character, and story there. It's not, choose your own adventure. Sure, you can choose which side quests you want to take and which ones you don't. You have a choice of decision of being good or bad or whatever. You have a choice in that. You have a choice of being a little bit more harsh or a little bit more kind, or siding with the creatures sometimes, or siding with the humans. There is an element of that for sure. But I do think it would be a huge stretch to say that The Witcher is a choose your own adventure kind of game. It's not. So for that reason, I don't really think it's that necessary, and I don't have a problem with it. But also at the same time, why not? Why not add that option? Like, it's going to be a problem for some of your audience. Just thinking about the money, why not? Oh, but then you're catering your game to bigots. You're catering the game to people that can't handle that the protagonist might be a woman, or they can't play the game because the character is a woman. You're catering to those people. And I'm sure that some people fall in that category, but I do think that the vast majority of people are not bigots just because they don't want to play as a woman. And vice versa, women that don't want to play as men. I do think that there is a big element of inserting yourself and immersing yourself into the story. And if you can't feel like you're part of the story, you're part of the narrative, the world is unfolding through this character that is you, looking through their eyes. If you can't feel that, or there's a barrier because the character is a woman, I don't think that necessarily makes you a bigot or anything. I just think that you have a preference with how you play your games, and that's fine. And why wouldn't the developers give you the choice? I don't know. I think that the more choices and the more options is always a good thing, and just because you want to see that doesn't make you a bigot. There's also an element of people that feel like it makes no sense for a woman to be doing a job like this, right? We get into another conversation that I also have opinions on. People will say things along the lines of, I could never see a woman, in this role, in this position, doing this job. A lot of people will say it doesn't make sense. A woman wouldn't really be able to lift a sword this heavy or, have the strength to do this type of thing. And a lot of people take offense to this, which I think is kind of stupid because, biology is real. Whether you want to admit it or not, biology is a thing. There are more male soldiers in history and male knights and so on that were men for a reason. Armor and equipment is heavy. It makes more sense for it to be a man. With that said though, if you study history, however, you will see that that's not always the case. That is not always true, and there were in fact female soldiers. One of the big points of debate with the new Assassin's Creed game, right? I know that there was the whole thing with Yasuke, which I don't have a problem with Yasuke either, to be honest with you, within the lore of Assassin's Creed. That's a separate conversation, but in my opinion, Assassin's Creed has always been about telling like untold stories of characters that we didn't quote unquote know the story of. I feel like they went with Yasuke in that case because the game was going to be forever compared with Ghost of Tsushima, so they were trying to be different. And I've even said that my personal preference for protagonist would have been Hattori Hanzo. I've said many times that I think that Hanzo would have been the perfect protagonist for that game because he was both a samurai and a shinobi. And for me, it's not even about the race of the character or any of this nonsense that people are discussing. I don't like the whole playing two characters thing. I didn't like it in GTA where you swapped around 3 different characters and you were constantly like breaking your focus from one character to another. And I also didn't like it in Assassin's Creed Syndicate where you were going from the male character and the female character. I don't like that. Pick one character and let's just go with it. Hanzo would have been perfect because he can fill the role of samurai and ninja. He would have been the clear perfect choice. But with that said, I don't really hate Yasuke either. I don't really have a problem with it. But I definitely don't have a problem with the female protagonist. I think that her name is Naoe or whatever it is. A lot of people don't like the fact that she's a female. And they're saying, okay, well, a female would have never been a ninja. She would have never been a warrior. A lot of people looked at that character and said that, equipment is heavy. A woman could not do this job. A woman would not be a ninja. And to those people, I say, go read history. They were, in fact, doing that. If you've never heard of the Onabushis, those were female samurais. Those were female Japanese warriors. They did, in fact, exist, and they did carry equipment just like men. And when we're talking about ninja specifically, that's probably even more so the case. It's even more likely for that to have been true. The reason for that is because many historians will tell you that there is only one true quote-unquote nation of ninjas. There is only one province of ninjas in history. Now that's debatable. I won't get into that because the whole shinobi thing it's a highly, contentious and debated topic in Japanese history in general, right? But most historians have this consensus that shinobi are individuals and warriors from the province of Iga. They are the ones that came up with ninjutsu and what we traditionally know as a ninja and the weapons and the secret art. And that village was very poor, very short in numbers, and often very desperate. They were getting attacked by Oda Nobunaga's son and then by Oda Nobunaga himself. They were, scrappy and they were doing whatever they could to survive. So I don't find it unlikely at all that we would have seen female shinobi from that village filling that role, if anything, by pure necessity. It just makes sense. So as far as that side of the debate goes on that game, I think it's, whether you like it or not, it's historically accurate. So I don't have a problem with that. With that said, as far as the gameplay and the company itself, Ubisoft, there's a lot of things that are not looking so great, right? But the choice of protagonists, I don't have that big of a problem with it. But let's come back to The Witcher. As far as in the case of The Witcher, I think it's a fictional world. She has fictional powers. It can make sense, right? I don't have a problem with it. The monsters that she's dealing with, if she was the average woman, she probably wouldn't be able to fight against, but neither would the average men. So I don't really have a problem with the character being female for that reason either, right? Oh, a woman wouldn't be able to wear armor. She wouldn't be able to carry equipment and 2 swords. Well, it's kind of a fantasy world. It's a very fictional world, and, Ciri can teleport and go between dimensions. Like, we're not really playing in reality here. This is not Kingdom Come Deliverance, and it's not trying to be, and it doesn't have to be. So for those reasons, I don't have a problem with it. So that's kind of my opinion on all of this. I try to make my videos in a way where I don't fence it. I don't want to beat around the bush and play both sides ever. I don't want to make it seem like I have no opinion about this, right? And both sides have arguments and they're both right, which I do believe that they do, but I do have opinions on how I feel about it. So as always, I'll go ahead and just tell you how I feel. And this doesn't mean that if you feel differently that you're wrong or that I don't see your side. I just don't agree with you. How do I feel about Ciri being the protagonist? I think it's fine. I think that she was a, natural continuation of the story. It makes sense. I don't have a problem with it. How do I feel about Ciri's change of appearance, voice, and personality? I don't have a problem with it. In fact, I like this a lot better than the original Ciri. How do I feel about the protagonist being a female in general and you being forced to play as a female and not having the option to be Geralt or a male? It's a very story and narrative-driven game. It's not a make-your-own character and make-your-own adventure game. The protagonist is what the protagonist is, so I don't care. I understand where people are coming from, though, because if I could choose between playing Ciri or Geralt, I would definitely choose to play Geralt, so I see where they're coming from. How do I feel about them breaking the lore to accommodate this female protagonist? I don't like it. I don't think they should do it. I don't like when they do that to any franchise. Oh, but don't you think that this is a very small thing to be upset about? Like, are you not going to buy the game because of this one little detail? Does it really piss you off that much? Is it that big of a deal? The answer is no, not really. I'm still probably going to buy the game. If the game is good, I'm going to play it. I'm not happy that they made this change. I'm not for it, but I'm still going to play the fucking game. Does it bother me? Yeah, they changed the lore. I don't like that. Why do it? You're breaking the world. You're breaking the immersion. It's important to people, but at the same time, to me, it's not that big. It's not that it's insignificant, and it's not that it doesn't matter that they did that. It's just that I'm not going to not play the game if it's good for that reason. Like, I'm not going to not play a game just for that. How do you feel about games trying to change characters to appeal to a modern audience? I don't like it. I think it's fucking bullshit, but I also think that this is not really the case. I don't really think that this change to Ciri's appearance and voice is to pander to that, in my opinion. And even if it was, to be honest, it looks better. I don't like when things are done just for the sake of appealing to a modern audience or to pander to whatever political view or way of seeing the world or whatever. I don't like that. But if it's done and it ends up looking better, cool. I don't give a fuck. On an ideological standpoint, right, when it comes to my general opinion about these things, I probably won't agree with you or I won't agree with the reason why you did it. But if you did it anyway and you accomplished something that, in my view, is a lot better, a lot darker, and fits more the game, I'm fine with it. You see, I don't really discriminate. I have very strong opinions about the way I feel about things in general, and trust me, I have a lot of opinions about just about everything. But I'm also not closed-minded to the point where if somebody that disagrees with me from an ideological standpoint, or political, or moral, if they disagree with me on a fundamental level, but they accomplish a product or a result that I find superior, I'm not gonna not side with you. I might not side with your ideology, your principles, and your way of seeing the world, but if you made a character that I think is cooler for whatever reason, I'm with you. So that's how I feel about this whole controversy and this entire situation. Ultimately, I really hope that the game is good. I love the Witcher series. I love the games. I hope the game is good. With that said, if you're still here, I appreciate you watching the video. Don't forget to drop a like, and I hope you have a great week. Thanks for watching.